This story has happened to each of you. Imagine what it would be like to be betrayed by a loved one, eliminate the lover of his previously beloved wife, and go to prison for the rest of your life. How will you feel, and how will your life change? Watch to the end. This story is based on real events and has shocked millions of people. It will change your ideas about love and trust. The Reckoning. Chapter 1. The Perfect Life. James and Emily had been married for 15 years, and to the outside world, they were the epitome of happiness. They lived in a beautiful house in the suburbs, they had 2 children, and they enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle. James was a successful lawyer known for his sharp mind and unwavering dedication to his clients. Emily, a former teacher, decided to stay at home to raise her children, and they made this decision together. But at first glance, their marriage was far from perfect. Over the years, the passion that once defined their relationship has faded. James was often absorbed in work, spending long hours in the office and bringing stress home. Emily, feeling neglected and unappreciated, began to resent him. They rarely quarreled, but the distance between them grew every day. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, James returned home and found Emily dressed for going out. She was wearing an elegant red dress and high heels, and her hair was perfectly styled. She barely glanced at him as she grabbed her purse. "I'm meeting friends for dinner," she said casually. "Don't wait for me." James nodded, too exhausted to ask her questions. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and sank down on the couch, scanning his email. But something about Emily's behavior bothered him. She had been distant lately, talking more and more on the phone, and spending less and less time with him. He tried to shake it off, telling himself that he was thinking too much. Chapter 2. Opening. A few weeks later, James's suspicions grew stronger. Emily's nighttime walks became more frequent, and she often returned home with a faint smile on her lips, as if hiding some secret. One evening, while Emily was in the shower, James noticed that her phone was buzzing on the kitchen table. Against his better judgment, he picked up the phone. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. "I can't wait to see you again. Tonight was amazing." James's heart sank. He unlocked his phone. Emily still hadn't bothered to change her password and scanned her messages. What he discovered shocked him. Emily was having an affair with a man named David, a personal trainer whom she met at the gym. The messages were frank, filled with declarations of love and plans for a future together. James was overwhelmed by a wave of emotions, anger, a sense of betrayal, and deep, aching sadness. He had always trusted Emily, and he had never imagined that she would betray him. But the evidence was irrefutable. He spent the rest of the night pacing around the house, thoughts of revenge swarming in his head. Chapter 3. The Plan. James wasn't the type to act on impulse. He was methodical, calculating, and patient. Over the next few weeks, he began to develop a plan. He wanted Emily to feel the same pain she had caused him, but he also wanted to make sure that her lover would pay the maximum price. He started by collecting additional evidence. He hired a private investigator to follow Emily and document her meetings with David. The investigator provided photographs, videos, and even audio recordings of their conversations. James also began monitoring Emily's social media accounts, noting the times she posted and the places she tagged. Meanwhile, he maintained the appearance of a loving husband. He took Emily on dates, bought her expensive gifts, and even planned a weekend trip. Emily, unaware that he knew about her affair, seemed to enjoy the attention. She began to wonder if James had changed, if it was possible to save their marriage. But James's kindness was just a trick. He was waiting for the right moment to strike. Chapter 4. Revenge. The opportunity came one evening when Emily told James she was going to yoga classes. He knew she was lying. She was dating David at a secluded cabin in the woods. James has already planned his move. He waited for Emily to leave, and then followed her in his car, keeping a safe distance so that he would not be noticed. When Emily arrived at the cottage, James parked his car nearby and walked over. He watched from the shadows as Emily and David hugged, their laughter echoing through the night. The sight filled him with rage, but he remained calm, focused on his plan. He waited until they were inside, and then quietly walked towards the hut. He took with him a pistol, which he had illegally acquired for this purpose. He took a deep breath, bracing himself for what he was about to do. James kicked the door open, catching Emily and David off guard. They froze. Their eyes widened in fear when they saw the gun in his hand. "James, what are you doing?" Emily screamed in a trembling voice. "I'm stopping this," James replied coldly. "You betrayed me, Emily. And you," he said, turning to David, "you took everything from me." Before either of them could react, James pulled the trigger. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the cabin, and David fell lifelessly to the floor. Emily screamed and fell to her knees next to him. James froze in place for a moment, his hands trembling as he realized the reality of what he had done. He looked at Emily's pale, tear-stained face and felt a pang of regret. But it was too late to retreat. "You'll never forget this," he said in a cold and firm voice. "You're going to live with this for the rest of your life." He turned and left the hut, leaving Emily alone with the body of her lover. Chapter 5. The Accident. James drove away from the cabin, thinking feverishly. He knew he had to get rid of the gun and any evidence linking it to the crime. But as he raced along the dark, winding road, his thoughts were consumed by what he had done. He had crossed the line, and there was no turning back. Approaching a sharp turn, James lost control of the car. The tires screeched, and the car skidded off the road and crashed into a tree. The impact was strong. James was thrown forward. He hit his head on the steering wheel. When he regained consciousness, he was in excruciating pain. His vision was blurred, and he could barely move. He tried to reach for the phone, but it was out of reach. He was trapped, alone, and wounded. As he lay there, waiting for help that might never come, James's mind wandered. He thought about Emily, the life they had built together, and how it had all come crashing down. He was thinking about David, the man he had eliminated in a fit of rage, and he thought about himself, the choice he had made, and the consequences he faced. He wanted to take revenge, but all he did was destroy himself. Chapter 6. Consequences. James was found a few hours later by a passing motorist who called for help. He was rushed to the hospital, where he underwent emergency surgery. Doctors managed to save his life, but he suffered serious injuries, a broken leg, a fractured spine, and a traumatic brain injury that affected his memory and cognitive abilities. Emily, meanwhile, had to deal with the consequences of James's actions. She called the police, reporting the shooting and the accident. James was arrested as soon as his condition became stable enough to be transported, and the evidence against him was incontrovertible. The gun, the photos, the messages, all pointed to his guilt. The trial became a media sensation, with reporters flocking here to tell the story of a successful lawyer who eliminated his wife's lover. James pleaded guilty and meekly accepted his fate. He was sentenced to life in prison, a broken man who had lost everything. Emily was also broken. She had lost her lover, her husband, and the life she had known. She left, trying to start over, but the scars of that night would never fully heal. Chapter 7. Reflections. Years later, James sat in his prison cell, staring at the walls that had become his world. He had plenty of time to reflect on his choice, on the anger and pain that drove him to such a disgusting act. Now he realized that revenge had not brought him peace, it had only brought more pain. He thought of Emily, of the love they had once shared, and how it had all been destroyed by betrayal and rage. He thought of David, the man he had never really known, whose life he had taken in a moment of madness. And he thought about himself, about what kind of person he had become. He was so consumed by his thirst for revenge that he lost sight of what really mattered. He gave up his life, his family, and his future all for a fleeting moment of contentment. Sitting alone in his cell, James made a vow to himself. He will spend the rest of his life trying to atone for his sins, to find at least some kind of redemption in the darkness surrounding him. It was little consolation, but it was all he had left. The end. What do you think about this story? Write in the comments, subscribe, and wait for the next video. It will show you the true essence of a person who shocks you. If you don't subscribe, you will make a huge mistake.